As journalists and television hosts, scripts are a lifeline. Each newscast, each story, it all revolves around a script.
But now it's time to go unscripted. That means we're not just going off script, we're throwing out the script altogether.
Each week, we're joined by fellow Farm Journal hosts and editors to peel back the layers on stories we've shared throughout the week.
Unscripted. It's real, it's raw, it's entertaining, and it's your chance to meet the personalities behind the personalities. I'm Tyne Morgan.
And I'm Clinton Griffiths. Welcome to Unscripted.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to Unscripted. Clinton Griffiths here with Tyne Morgan. Tyne, good to see you.
Good to see you. I know we're both on the road every single week right now, so it's nice to take a break and have a conversation on Unscripted. I feel like it's been a while since I've chatted with you.
What's your favorite thing from the road lately? Have you stumbled across anything you're like, man, that was kind of cool. I really enjoyed that.
I mean, I always enjoy food, so
Yeah,
I feel
of
like
course.
I need to say that. Each week we go to a different university for College Roadshow. And so just, the excitement and the students that show up and the questions and some of the research, it's just fun to, peel back the layers on what's happening at these universities across the country, because there is some amazing research that's going on that doesn't always get highlighted. And then World Dairy Expo, we had some touching stories that we covered at World Dairy Expo this year. And, when you can live an entire week on cheese and ice cream and beer.
That's right.
I mean, there's no complaints there, Clinton.
You can't complain about it. Well, I've been to, I think, Idaho and Colorado this fall. A couple of trips out west, went down to Purdue as well. I keep thinking about college, and for the longest time, it felt like it was 5 years ago. And it wasn't. I think maybe last year I realized, no, that was 20 years ago. And it always feels like we were just there.
Well,
and I don't know when that changes. I guess when you're 50, I don't know.
When I was walking across campus, I'm like, they probably think I'm one of them. I mean, and then you realize, no, you don't look that young anymore. So they don't think that you're one of them. I think our guest this week.
Speaking of looking young.
I don't think he ever ages. I know we called Missy Bauer the crop whisperer. But I would argue that our guest this week is also the crop whisperer, the crop doctor, and the crop king. I think he's the trifecta, Clinton.
The Wizard of Ill.
Oh,
Ooh.
nice. Maybe that is his new title. Well, we can't wait any longer because we're excited.
Let's bring him out.
Ken Ferrie.
Hey, Ken, what's going on? Have you been called a wizard before?
No, I have.
What about the crop doctor?
That neither.
What would you, out of all of those, what would you prefer?
How about Ken Ferrie?
It's like, just don't call me late for dinner. I'll show up. Ken, how's it going over in Illinois this year? I know, you're always elbow deep in the middle of a growing season and a harvest season. Harvest moving along? Okay.
Yeah, it's actually moving around pretty smooth. I would say we're 90% done with soybeans, deep into corn. And it's, of course, we had both corn and beans. We started planting in April and we finished the end of May. So that's kind of created a pretty nice scenario in the fall, meaning it's a kind of a long drought out fall, but there isn't no bottlenecks that we have to worry about like we do when it's all got to come in at one time. So guys have been moving from dry field to dry field, and we did have to finish up with dry beans. So all in all, knock on wood, so far, it's been a pretty smooth harvest, I think, for most of our operations. It's been long and drawn out. It's when we got a long way to go yet, but no major bottlenecks that I've heard of so far yet.
Don't talk about yields yet, okay? Because we're going to save that for talking tea. Okay, that's the gossip that we want to know this weekend. But here, the bottlenecks, I mean, just yesterday, I was calling around and trying to figure out where these bottlenecks are coming from. We knew it was going to be a big crop in this area of Missouri. We knew that. We knew a lot of it would happen at once. But, we've got our local co-op grain elevator only open for, they're taking corn, soybeans just a couple hours a day right now because they're full and they can't get it to Kansas City. Cargill was closed on Monday, didn't open until noon on Tuesday, 8 a.m. I think they have limited hours right now. And that's been my question, Ken, is where's the bottleneck here? I mean, we knew it was a big crop. We knew all of that. But my question is, it's not like we have a rail strike. It's not like there's problems. We have problems with finding enough truck drivers. They just can't get it out of Kansas City. And so, it does look like, no pun intended, but it is a perfect storm. We have a really big crop. And then we knew farmers held on to that old crop a little too long. And so it came all at once. But it is odd. I mean, Clinton and I were talking about it earlier this week, Ken. You have that major ADM soybean processing. I think it was ADM, right, Clinton? That soybean processing site in Des Moines that shut down in the middle of harvest for repairs. Talk about absolutely awful timing right now. It's a big crop. We need every space in those bins we can possibly find.
And we could see the bottlenecks here too, now that we finish up with beans and you throw all these combines on corn. So the volume skyrockets. And I was in the elevator actually selling some of our crop and talking to the manager there, and they were using corn space to hold soybeans. So he was hoping that he could move those beans quick enough that it wouldn't come back to bite him, as far as, but they're underestimated what they needed for bean storage. So we could see those bottlenecks show up as we get deeper and deeper into the corn harvest. But right now, the complaining hasn't been something that, usually they're quick to complain when they're sitting in the field waiting for trucks and stuff like that. It hasn't been too bad, but that could change in a week's time here too when you move everybody to corn.
Yeah, they'll have plenty of time to watch and listen to Unscripted is what I'm guessing. Get the latest talking tea. And we ought to do that, Tyne. We ought to jump into kind of the gossip here of what's been going on out in the field. All right, let's do it. Let's talk some tea.
All right.
Did you always want to be an agronomist? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, that changed quite a bit. Believe it or not, at one time I thought I wanted to be a carpenter.
Nice.
I could see that. I could see
that. Spent some time in working with carpenters, building pole sheds and stuff like that. And then I wanted to switch from there into ag business. And it was after I switched into ag business, I decided I wanted to do both ag business and agronomy. So, but yeah, took a couple different roads to get here, I guess you'd say.
Ken, when did your business really take off? Because I know a lot of great agronomists across the country that are full of so much great insight and great information. But I just look at the farmers that you work with and how loyal you are to them, how loyal they are to you. You have really grown an impressive business, and it's because of your knowledge. It's because of your insights. It's because, you're really good at what you do. We called you the crop doctor for a reason. You were just really good at what you do. So at what point did your business, though, really start to take off? How old were you?
My business started, I guess I moved from retail fertilizer, and in the retail business, started out at the bottom, right? Floater operator, grain elevator operator, that type of thing, and moved up into management. And then actually started crop consulting while I worked for a retailer, and then broke out on my own in, the early 90s. And a lot of those customers followed me at that time from the fertilizer retail side into the crop consulting. So, but it's been a slow build, I guess you would say, from the 90s on. And just like any other business, right? You build your customer base a lot of times based on referrals from other farmers and that type of thing. So, and it continues to grow today. But a scenario where been through the 90s, been through the 2000s, as far as adding customers all the way through.
Well, I know you've always talked a lot about building a system and trying to, put together and stack all of these layers that eventually build yields. Let's pull up our October corn map, Zach, if we can, and talk me through this a little bit, Ken. As you look there in Illinois, we're talking 222 bushel corn yields this year. That's a big number. How does that stack up for you in your years of experience?
Yeah, that's a big number, no matter where you are as far as the state goes. But but looking at the harvest so far, I think it's within reach. There's some big numbers coming out of these farms, and if they don't, and that'll be the interesting part, because a lot of the state now is under a D1 drought, which started July 1st. So when our yield reports come in, if we're having any soft numbers, it's coming from that D1 drought area. But I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of field records that are falling this year, meaning that the highest the field has ever done in both corn or soybeans. So if that trend holds through this corn crop, I think that number is actually doable.
Ken, which is crazy to me, because when we were on crop tour this year, scouts weren't really, they weren't overly impressed with the Illinois crop. And Ken, I don't know if it's because we saw at that time a 225 bushel per acre number printed by USDA, and we knew it was going to be big. And so then they got in there and they saw some problems and they expected to see a perfect crop. But, even you are talking, I know, about aphids and farmers needing to scout their corn for aphids before harvest. I really don't remember talking much about corn aphids in the past.
So the corn aphids this year, we deal with them every year at a small amount. Corn aphids this year was the largest infestation that I've dealt with in my career. It stretched from the east to the west as far as the state's concerned. And we spent a lot of effort and time trying to control aphids that we normally don't have to do. Now, if you weren't quick enough with your spray, or if you didn't spray, we've already seen that it's taken a good 25 bushel off of some of these fields. So it was a very costly insect if you missed it. Now, again, if you take 25 bushel off a 275 bushel crop, right, you still got a big crop. But I think some guys are finding out the hard way that we should have maybe sprayed more acres and we maybe should have sprayed them sooner. But aphids are kind of a variety or hybrid type thing, meaning that they will smoke one variety that's in half the planter and the other variety they don't like. And so it gets a little frustrating as far as sometimes if you've split planter, you got to spray the whole field, because how do you get the, every other 24 rows sprayed otherwise? But this will go down in the books for us anyway as the most corn we've given up to the aphids. We worried about tar spot, and tar spot came in late and has some effect on the crop. But for a number of our good yielding varieties this year, aphid is going to be the one thing, if it wasn't managed, is going to come back to bite some guys.
Ken, you mentioned really being in kind of a drought that started 1st of July. Talk to me a little bit about the resilience here of this crop. Do you feel like it's better management, or do you think the genetics have really helped with the resilience and getting through these dry stretches that we seem to experience every year? Just when it happens is maybe what moves.
I do think it's a combination. I think highest in that combination is genetics. So the genetics today are really carrying us through some of these drier stretches. But as these crops are coming out, if you're in that drought area, for instance, and you're dealing with some compaction or add compactions and aphids and that type of thing, there's where you're seeing the softer yields, meaning that guys are disappointed with those yields compared to maybe what they're hearing at the coffee shop or that type of thing. So the more things you got right, the better you handle the dry weather. And we got a lot of areas, again, that are 3 to 6 inches behind in rainfall since July 1st. So normally that would kick the blocks out from underneath everything, but you're still seeing a lot of, I'm going to say above average yields coming out of that area. But it didn't give you a lot of room to miss too many things, right? If you missed on the nitrogen, that's probably the one that's stopped some of the crop if you were in the wetter part of the spring. Then add the aphids, and then if you add compaction. So there's doing a lot of service calls this time of year, guys that are disappointed and want, a second opinion of where this took place, because they just took 3 fields out that were maybe record yield, and then this one goes off the rail. And usually it's not one thing, it's a combination of things. But I do think genetics is carrying the load here on the corn side. The soybean side, it kind of depends on where these beans were during grain fill when that dry weather kicked in.
So I'm also hearing that it doesn't matter if this corn was planted in April or May, it's yielding about the same. And so I have 2 questions, but my first question is, what is this year teaching us about planting dates when it comes to corn?
That's a good question.
Or reminding us?
Yeah, I think our early April corn was good. The yields came in strong, and that was good. Around here, though, as we moved into the May corn, they even ticked up more. And seeing some really strong yields coming out of our May corn, even better than some of the early April corn. And I assume, based on what we're picking up from our plots and stuff, a lot of that is the coming out of the ground in 5 or 6 days. The ear counts are better in that case. So I think the better the conditions are when you put corn in, the better the potential. And especially for Illinois anymore, we can almost count on September for grain fill. We didn't have our first frost till last night, so that pushes it back. So it gives we got more room on the backside, it seems, more sunshine, good ETs to get finished on the back end. It maybe changes the dynamics a little bit. And we used to say we want all our corn planted by April 21st, 22nd. That's true. If the conditions for planting are good, you need it planted in that time window. But if you have to mud the corn in to get it in that window, the premiums just the last 6 years actually would say, make sure you're putting the corn in based on soil conditions, not on the calendar, and it'll usually reward you.
It'll pay you off. Let's flip over and show, Zach, I think we've got the soybean yield map as well.
Real quick, before we move to soybeans, Ken, you think that 222 though on corn in Illinois, you think that's doable?
I think it's doable. We got a long way to go. So if it falls apart between here and the end, that may make a difference. But based on the momentum going into it, I actually think it's doable.
What do you think about Iowa? What do you think about Iowa? 214. Do you think that's? I know you have some clients over there as well.
Yeah, that one I think is going to be harder to hit because of how tough the spring was in so many areas. I think they're going to have some counties that are going to pull that number down and make that a little bit tougher. But I bet they don't miss it by much.
Okay. All right. Let's flip over to soybeans. Ken, as we look at the soybean number, 67 for Illinois, how does that strike you as far as in your career and whether or not this is a significant number?
And up 6 bushels from last year.
6 bushels.
Yeah. I think that one might be a little bit harder to get to. The D1 drought area caught a lot of our May beans, and while we got good pod set and we were there to kick it through the goalpost, we just didn't get the size of that bean at the end. So now, granted, these yields are still good, but when we started out with soybeans in the mid 80s to mid 90s on our early planted stuff, as we moved into the May planted beans, we started to see more of them that would drop back in the mid 60s to mid 70s. So as we finish up this harvest, I think that one will be the tougher one to get to just because we needed one more rain. If we'd have picked up a really decent rain across the state, in the early to mid-August timeframe, I think it would have been doable. I think we had the pod set and we had the beans. We're just maybe not going to get the size to do it. I still think it's going to be a big crop for us, though.
Would have been curtains. Ken, as you talk about soybeans, is there anything that you've changed your mind about in the last 5 years that's really moving the needle on yield for soybeans?
Based on our plots and research, definitely the biggest thing that moves the needle here is planting them early. Okay. So planting them out there. We started planting the last week in March, first week in April, trying to get them in by the 15th to 20th of April. And it's caught on. It's bigger than a fad at this point, meaning that a lot of our customers will plant their soybeans before they plant their corn. Mm-hmm. And that whole process has actually increased corn yields because you're not pushing corn so hard because you got beans to plant later. So you get in there and you get your beans taken care of, then you kind of have a breather to go ahead and plant your corn. So you're usually plant corn in better conditions, but those early planted beans sometimes get frosted, sometimes have to be replanted. But we just took a plot out about 10 days ago, I guess it was, and we had early April beans, we had May 8th beans and May 14th beans. The difference between I believe it was April 16th and May 14th on the same variety in the same field was 14 bushel.
Wow.
And that's a big number. Even if that's cut that in half, that's still a big number for soybeans. What allows us to do that, of course, is the technology we have for seed treatments. Because you could put these beans in the ground and they could be there 2 weeks before they get out. So today we have fungicides and insecticides to protect those beans that we didn't have 10 years ago. So I think that's been a big game changer in beans, and at the same time, it's changed corn, meaning that guys are taking their focus off of how fast we got to slam this corn in. Let's go get the beans in, and realize you may replant them. But if there's 14 bushel hanging into it, guys, I'll replant them if I have to, if I can take a swing at that early bean.
Ken, why do you think that's such a hard thing for farmers? I mean, to have that mindset shift? Because I know around here, farmers try to get their beans planted early, but it is a plant corn first, plant beans second. I mean, it is hard for them to make that switch. Why do you think that is a habit that is so hard to break?
I think just that is a habit. You know, it's what Grandpa did, what Dad did. That's what I'm going to do. It just kind of ingrained in. That's the good part about farming. You plant your corn, and then you wait for it to warm up, plant your beans. And that habit was established when we were bin running beans. We didn't have the seed treatments. We didn't have the quality we need. Yeah. And it's a good point. I've had farmers stick their beans in April and not tell their landlord, and the landlord finds out about it, and they're upset. You know,
yeah,
you can't
I've
do
heard that too.
That's poor. That's poor farming practices. Yeah. And, then you get to the fall, and the best beans he ever raised, and then it's like it was his idea. But
yep.
You know,
and then exactly you've got to. Right. We all have that kind of boss. Then you got to make it their idea. Is what you do. Ken.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Ken, real quick before we move to what the Sigma. Word on the street is we possibly won't have a dicamba label next year. Possibly farmers won't have dicamba as a tool next year. I mean, do you think that could be reality?
I hope not, because in some cases we got such tough messes with these weeds that it's
especially this year. It was a disaster this year.
Yeah,
right.
You know, so and you know, like everything else, it needs good stewardship and that type of thing. But will we survive without it? Yeah. Will we have to put more herbicides on and be more proactive in different ways? Yeah. But it's a situation where, you know, I hope not. But at the same time, these guys will deal with it if it happens.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise you too terribly much if that ends up being the case. Hey, let's go into kind of an odd segment, but I think this will be fun, Ken. We'll give it a shot here. We're going to call it What the Sigma.
Ken, will you do me a favor this week? When you're in a plot with your son, okay? And something just, you're like, what the heck? Will you just say what the Sigma and see how he reacts, please?
Okay.
I would really like to know.
Yeah, this comes from, you know, having teenagers and all the weird sayings that they say now. You know, we used to say, obviously, you know, in the 50s, the cat's meow, right? And I'd say that to my kids the other day, and they're like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? And so, you know, every generation has their own sayings. This is one of those, and it just kind of means like, what in the world? Like, what the heck?
What the heck?
Are you talking about?
What the Sigma?
And so we try to, you know, kind of march through something that caught our eye every week of what in the world? I can't believe this is really real. And so I'll start, and then we'll pass it around a little bit. So my What the Sigma moment for the week was on Twitter watching Elon Musk unveil, and Zach, we want to pull that up.
Dang it, Clinton, you stole mine. Why? Oh. Go ahead.
The Optimus robot. Yeah. So these things just walk out, and they're supposed to eventually be run by AI. And he says that once they get up to scale, they're talking maybe be able to sell them for $20,000-$30,000 a piece. And everybody in there, he thinks it'll be the most bought product ever in the history of the world. And anyway, so my thought was, Ken, where do you think you could put this bad boy to work there on the farm? Maybe running a seed tender, or maybe we could put them in a tractor doing a little fall tillage. I don't know. Maybe there'd be plenty. They even say babysit your kids.
Well, if you're going to take away dicamba, we need them to walk beans.
There we go. That's exactly right. We need them to walk. You know what?
Outfit them with a hoe.
I think that's a business model.
How are they with a hoe and the kind you use in a field? How are they?
I think that's a business model with legs, so to speak.
But Ken, how long have we been talking about robots? I mean, how long?
Since the
30 years
Jetsons.
ago, we were talking about robots. 20 years ago, we were talking about robots. 10 years ago, we were talking about how these tiny robots were going to take over the field, and they never did. So I understand the premise. I understand, but heck, it's hard to get people to use AI and some of those tools today, let alone, and by the way, $20,000 to $30,000. Elon's in a different tax bracket than, I can't speak for Ken, but is in a different tax bracket than Clinton and I. Maybe if they get inflation under control, then we can afford a $20,000 or $30,000 robot. But until then, I don't think these are going to be flying off the shelf.
Listen, if it'll wash and fold clothes, I think my wife would do it. Mary Beth, I think she would do it tomorrow. She'd find the money. We'd have more couch cushions turned over than you can shake a stick at looking for dollars and cents.
Can you imagine people going to the bank? I don't need a loan for a car. I need a loan for a robot. Can you get me one of those? What's the interest rate?
Ken, yeah, I think that there maybe walking beans is a good idea. You know, it just kind of goes back to this conversation. We have it a lot about if we talk about autonomy, like 10 years ago, I mean, we were rolling out tractors without cabs on them that were just going to work fields and plant our entire crop. And Ken, does it surprise you that it takes a while for these big concept ideas to really find their way? And they usually find their way to the farm in some sort of different configuration, it seems like.
Yeah. You know, all the hoopla about the autonomy on tractors and everything else. And it's hard to believe it actually got to us with drones first, right?
Right.
You know, we're doing a lot of spraying this year. The drone went from being just something we're trying our fad to a retail tool. And that's all done, you know, nobody's steering that. Even the guy running the controls is just running the controls to bring it down. And, you know, it takes care of everything itself. And you realize if you can fly through the air over 80-acre field and do that kind of precision application, that why couldn't we do that with tractors and, you know, that type of thing. So, but I just didn't think it'd be the drones that got here first. And I think they're doing a great job. And you know, a situation where you realize what's doable when you can land a drone that just went across your 80-acre field. You can land it in you know, a 3-foot area that it took off from. That's kind of neat stuff.
Well,
and I know
impressive. Elon did roll out also a cyber. I guess my little girls were talking about that, a cyber cab. I think my husband showed it to him. But you think about some of those technologies, and of course, it's not affordable right now with commodity prices. But if they could come up with some grain trucks that could, you know, you could set the points from point A to point B and where you need to go, whether that be your own grain bins or the local co-op. I mean, that's the biggest challenge here, is finding enough drivers. And Ken, it doesn't matter where you go. We know in ag, labor's a problem. And right now in harvest, it's that seasonal labor who can help out at this time. But my, what the Sigma was actually a different Elon Musk. It was the Starship rocket, and the world's first.
Yeah.
That it was captured on its return to the launch pad. Just crazy what Elon is doing right now. And, you know, you mentioned the robots, we mentioned the cyber cab. But I've got a couple questions for you on the Elon Musk, okay? Who in ag, Ken, is our Elon Musk, do you think? Who's the one that's really revolutionizing what we're doing in agriculture?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a good question. I think, you know, it's probably multiple Elon Musk, I guess you would say. You know, think about the gears that are turning inside of companies like Precision and 360 and stuff like that. They're on the ground trying to figure out what the farmer needs, and then going back and saying, well, you know, sky's the limit. How are we going to get there? And then once it's developed, how are we going to afford it? That type of thing. So I think the corn planter is probably kind of the Elon Musk area of farming, meaning the technology added to the corn planter in the last 10 years is just amazing. Yeah. What they can do with electronics and that type of thing, as far as being able to identify it. You're starting to see that same kind of approach taken to, again, back to the drone, to be able to fly a field and identify disease and insects from a drone, meaning they're using, you know, basically infrared, but they can look for nutrient deficiencies as well as disease. And as we move into the phase with the company Interplant, where they're actually putting, genetic traits in the crop that would signal when it's stressed. So from satellite imagery, you could tell that a disease is attacking that plant, which for us consultants, that'd be nice because we can't see tar spot till about 2 weeks after the infection. Sure would be nice to know if the plant could talk to us ahead of time and say, hey, something's happened here in the last few days, within the last 48 hours, that maybe we need to be more timely with our application, or fungicide application, that type of stuff. So it's kind of exciting to watch.
When you talk about farming by the plant, because I know you talked about that. It's not the field, and we want to just narrow it down to that's what you're talking about. Some of that technology, Ken.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And each plant is going to produce so many pods, so many kernels. As far as what technology to make sure that everyone counts.
Yeah.
Today, what we can do on the corn planter is just amazing compared to what it was 10 years ago, and definitely. We go back to what Grandpa and Grandma did, and with the checking the corn and all that kind of stuff, and think about how that's changed. And that's part of that record yield that you're talking about. Is guys are using this technology already, and it just keeps improving.
Ken, if you look out 5-10 years, and I know that's a long time in our business, but if you look out with your crystal ball, is there anything out there? And maybe it's this interplant idea, but is there anything out there that you say, I think this is going to land, and in 5 years or 10 years, everybody's going to do this?
I think the crunch, besides, finances and that type of thing, the crunch that we deal with a lot within our customer base is labor. So if we can't find more labor, any technology that could decrease the amount of labor that's needed, and you're starting to see some of that, right, where the guy in the combine can control the grain cart. If the drone can take place and do a lot of the scouting that we're trying to do on foot right now, those types of things, I think the farmer will look at, and they maybe don't have to increase the bushels. They just got to give me more time. They got to give me, so I don't have to hire so many people to get that job done because I can't find them to get it done. So right. The technology that decreases the labor input is probably the one that the farmers will be paying attention to the most.
Okay, before we move on to our next segment, because we need to, but for your What the Sig Mom, you try some crazy things in the field, Ken. I mean, do you just wake up in the middle of the night and say, what's the craziest thing I could do this year? And I'm going to do it. Is that how this works? I want to know.
The wizard of yield.
Yeah. Some of the ideas are from what I'm observing. Some of them come from our farmers. Some of them come from the kids here that we work with. So a situation where it's a mixture, and some of them are just the aftermath of mistakes that were made. And then you're trying to figure out how did that happen. And so it's a mixture of ideas that evolve over time, I guess you would say.
Okay. So then what is the craziest idea that you or field trial that you're doing this year? What's the craziest thing? I want to know.
Now, before we get too far, Ken, a few years ago, we were doing twin rows on a lot of stuff. You were doing multi-variable rate planting with multiple hybrids across different things. So just to preface, you've done it all. You've done a lot of different things.
Yeah, not all of it's been crazy, but I just, I like crazy. Ken crazy likes crazy. So that's what I want to talk about.
Crazy like a fox.
Yeah. There's a mix. Probably the one that maybe even caught me by surprise. We do what we call flex plots. And that's where we take corn hybrids and we plant them at traditional 36,000. And then we plant them all the way down to 22,000. So not for yield, but to learn what's going on. So at 22,000, you should get the biggest ear of corn genetically possible. And then as you go up in population, that ear shrinks in size. And what we're trying to study is how does that ear flex? In 22,000, if we go much lower than that, we get 2 ears, and that messes with the study. So we're trying to study out. I took a plot out yesterday with 12 entries in it in this study, and we planted all at 36,000. That plot was tight. It ranged from 257 to 280 bushel planted at 36,000. Then we took out the same hybrids in the same plot planted at 22,000. At 22,000, the yield ranged from 229 to 266.
What?
266 bushel. And at 266 bushel, that entry was 5 bushel better than when we planted it at 36,000. It was 261 versus 266. And that just
wild. That
blows you away, right? I mean, you think about 110 years ago, when I was in college, 6-7 bushel per thousand, 90,000 kernels per thousand. These hybrids, some of them are 12 bushel per thousand years. They're down in that 55,000 kernels to make a bushel. This is new in genetics that in the last, I'm going to say last 7 or 8 years, that is just baffling to me. If I'd have saw that 10 years ago, I'd have said somebody is loony in this plot, but I took it out myself. So I tell you, those numbers are real.
Those numbers are. Do you think if it will follow a little bit of what we've seen as far as soybeans go, or we pull back populations a little bit? Do you think that trend will follow?
I think it already has. Most growers have pulled back population, and most growers realize in soybeans, population is more of a weed control than a yield control.
Yeah.
So you got to have a heavy enough population to get the weed control, because soybean will bush out, but corn doesn't bush out. It doesn't put on, a bunch of ears in that case. But it's definitely changed the game some. And in the 12 hybrids in this plot, 4 of them did not have enough yield increase from 22 to 36 to pay the seed bill. Now, there's some of them that responded very strong to the population too, but this was something that we were trying to learn ear characteristics. We weren't trying to learn this. And now, as the last 5 or 6 years, we realized, whoa, we're playing with different hybrids than Dad did as far as their ability to do that.
Well, and you look at cutting back. I mean, we asked in our Agronomist monthly monitor, those results just came out this week, and we asked, do you think farmers are planning to cut back on their fall fertilizer applications? 70% said yes. We've talked to farmers. Some of them cut back this year. Some of them planning to cut back this next year. So, Kent, is it actually population that they need to be cutting back on and not some of those other inputs? What's your advice for farmers?
Well, in this particular plot, they're small, so we put them within a certain soil type. We're still harvesting them with combine, but remember that 4 out of 12 didn't respond to population, but the rest of them did. So it comes down to knowing your hybrid. But if you're in light soil that has a water holding capacity issue, that's the hybrid you're choosing there. So you can once you pull the plant density back, you reduce your water needs, and kind of, as we move forward, trying to learn this so we can do the process of multi-hybrid variable rate population going forward, especially for, the guys in Missouri, Southern Iowa, where we got a lot of topography changing as you go across the field. We have the technology today to go ahead and put a hybrid that does better on a gravel hill and a different hybrid on the bottom, and we can change the population if we want. We just need to learn that about the genetics today, and maybe get the seed companies to help us. Because by the time we figure it out here at Crop Tech, a good chance the variety may be on its way out. So, we need to get on the front end of this instead of the back end.
Yeah, it's a constant chase. You're constantly chasing and trying to grab a hold of these things. Let's jump to our final segment here, because Ken, we know you've got to get back in a combine before.
Yeah, apparently he has work to do.
Apparently he's got work to do today. Somebody's expecting him to do some work. Let's jump to our last segment. We're going to call it My Fantastic Life.
Real quick, before we get into this, next time, can you guys tell me what you're wearing? Because you guys are in blue, I'm in leopard. Maybe you all should have worn leopard, I'm thinking.
Yeah. That's at the cleaners. I had that leopard print suit that I was going to wear today.
Tyne, I'll let you know. I'll never wear leopards.
You're disappointing me, Ken. Here, you took some time off during a harvest.
He's more of a tiger print. He's more of a tiger print,
Camo, maybe.
And I feel like you're a new man. Really? Because not only apparently this week did you shoot your own video for our own Rhonda Brooks, and I asked her if hell froze over, okay? Because that is impressive. But 2, You took time off during harvest. Ken, who are you? Have you replaced? Is it actually you in somebody else's body? I'm confused right now. What's going on? Because this is not the Ken Ferrie I know.
Yeah, but I have a farmer sitting there looking at his watch like, where is he?
I know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're also not in a red shirt, which I think is your color, though, Ken. So tell us about, you took a family trip, and this is a little segment. We just talk a little bit about personal life and family, but you went to Spain. Tell us about that. That sounds like a great trip.
Yeah, we went there for basically about 2 weeks. I think there was 12 of us in the group, all family, brother-in-law, sisters, kids. So, bounced around Spain, and weather was perfect. So I guess normally it's like 100 degrees plus, and it was just in the 80s for us. So that was kind of cool. Saw a lot of, I guess, neat things. We were in Madrid and Cadiz and different places, and got a chance, of course, to go see some of the farming that's there, and went to a co-op, and went to a irrigation co-op and a regular, I guess, say farmer co-op as well. So, I could have spent the whole day with the farmers out there the whole trip, but that probably would have went well with everybody else.
I was just about to say, okay, so you did send us some pictures, which are amazing. What are we looking at here, Ken?
That is an irrigation channel or aqueduct. So at the very top of that, water used to run across, and they would run water for miles for irrigation and also for the city to use. So up on the top of that is a trough, and they're running water across the country. And that was built by the Romans, believe it or not, before even Christ was on earth, and it's still standing. And it's just baffled me that, and the stones in this structure are not mortared in.
What?
So they're all stacked and cut. So the keystones and stuff in place, but there's no mortar between those stones, and it's still in place. And they actually still had water running across it, I think about 50 years ago, but it's still a structure that now is preserved. But at the same time, throw all the weather that we throw at it these days, and it's still there. But to me, it was just baffling that the Romans could do this to figure out how to water their crops thousands of years ago, before cranes and lasers and GPS and all this stuff.
That's right.
Like, wow.
Well, and how long ago was this used? I mean, it's been out of commission for how long?
I think it was used up to about like 50 years ago. I could be wrong on that.
That recent?
But, that it was moving water across it, and then they changed it around. But again, it's an area where they used to drive cars between these arches. They've stopped that now. As far as if you went through town, you'd drive underneath this thing.
Isn't it wild? That always strikes me whenever you travel around the world and you go to different places and you see different cities and you hear the history, and they're talking about, 1,000 years ago this happened, and we're talking, well, my grandfather or my great-grandfather started this farm. And it's just such a different perspective to wrap your head around 2,000-3,000 years ago versus a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah. Every building is just hundreds of years old, and we think here in the States we don't have any of that old, and if they did, they'd be tore down and something else would be put back.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
I mean,
and you did make it to harvest, right? Tell us about a harvest picture here.
So they're harvesting olives and almonds. And that minivan hooked to that trailer back there, he's unloading olives at the co-op that we're at. And we were shocked. The whole 2 weeks that we were over there, we saw 2 F-150 pickups, and they were at a irrigation co-op. Everybody else was running up and down the road with these minivans and those trailers. That is equivalent of an F-150 truck in Spain where we were. And they're taking their olives in, they're taking their almonds into market. So I imagine it's pretty handy. You drop by school and unload the kids, and then go to the co-op and unload your crop. But we were just baffled that, and most of the vehicles were diesel, which is kind of surprising too. But up and down the road, you could tell the farmer because he had a trailer hooked behind his minivan.
Can you see this in the U.S. and that picture is definitely showing up on social media? Like, look at that.
And you can tell that picture.
I know you need to go. And so Clinton and I will finish after you head out, because I know you have got to get to this farm. We promised you to keep you on time, and we have not. But what is the one takeaway that you want farmers to know as they're finishing harvest, but planning for next year?
Well, as you're finishing harvest, my biggest concern right now is these guys have been at it a long time here because we've not had a rain delay. And that, unfortunately, when things can happen, people start getting in zombie mode. So my call out would be everybody step it up. Don't forget maybe to give their crew some time to regenerate so we don't end up with any accidents here at the end. Going forward, if you're going to cut back on fertility for next year, we're dealing with that here right now. Let the soil test do the talk. Look at your soil test and decide whether or not you can pull back on that fertility. If you do pull back on that fertility, realizing your values are going to go down, and eventually somebody's got to make that back up. But if your fertility is in good shape, there's probably room there for guys to pull back a little bit.
All right. Ken, well, it's always an interesting year. Ken, really appreciate you being here. The Wizard of Yield, I think, is what I'm going to call you. Tyne's going to stick with the crop doctor. I think that's good.
I mean,
yeah, I'll just stick with Ken.
Okay, well, fine. Well, you can just stick with Ken.
So humble. But don't forget to say what the Sigma to Isaac this week. And I would like to know his reaction.
Right.
Okay, make sure to text me.
I'll give it a try. I'll try it with grandkids too.
Yeah, you'll really get a reaction then. I'm telling you. Trust me on that. Ken, appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye, Ken. Guys, take care.
All right, have a good one.
Okay, Clinton, my fantastic life. What do you have?
Well, we've got family coming in to visit, which is nice. So some folks going to drive up from Oklahoma, spend a little time with us. So
it's Mary Beth's side.
Mary Beth's side. So we've been frantically, trying to make the house look like we always live in an absolutely spotless house. So that's and we're make it look like we're not gone every other evening or every weekend chasing kids to one event after the other. So and then my son is gearing up to go to National FFA coming up here in a few days down in Indy. So I'm excited for him to get to go, and they're going to be able to hit the rodeo and the concert. And I know there's probably thousands and thousands of kids across the country. Their parents are also gearing up for them to be gone for a number of days. And so, I just like to take a minute and think about that, and think about the days when you and I were, wearing a jean jacket and getting across to go to some of these events with FFA.
Yeah. So if any of you are at National FFA convention and you see a really tall blonde kid from Indiana, that's Colton Griffiths, make sure to say, are you Clinton Griffiths' son? Because I'm sure he loves that. Yeah.
And then be like, your dad said what the Sigma on this podcast, and he'll be completely embarrassed, which will be great, because that is my main goal in life, is to embarrass my kids at least a little bit. Like, not under the table embarrassed, but just so they're like, oh my gosh, I love that.
Nope. That is my goal as well. And that's probably my story this week. Yeah. I'm getting ready to hit the road, headed to Mizzou. So I'll hopefully have some stories from there coming up. But last week was homecoming. And so, small town, 800 people. I love tradition. I love homecoming. I love all of that. I have learned over the years that James's school spirit is not limitless. Every year at homecoming, apparently I burn him out and he hits a ceiling. So I don't understand that, because I feel like with school spirit, it's infinite. So I don't understand how you could get burned out, but apparently he does. So anyway, I'm all about it. And we had a lot of different activities for Booster Club, a lot of different things, but I found out on the pep assembly for Friday, for the first time this year, the elementary kids were going to get to come to the pep assembly, which is awesome, because I truly believe you've got to get your kids involved. For them to really be involved in high school, it's got to start at a young age. They've got to be part of those traditions. They have got to get ingrained in it. And so I try to do that with my girls, but I want all of the kids to have that experience. So I found out there was going to be no mascot. And I was like, over my dead body, will there be no mascot?
You do not wear the mascot.
Oh, yeah. I was Biddy the Bearcat on Friday. Okay?
Yes.
I wish I had a video, because Clinton,
I'm sure there's video.
Gritty. I practiced the gritty so much. And this is when kids were still filing in and stuff. So it wasn't full yet, but I was entertaining the elementary kids because they had to sit quiet while the rest of the high school kids came in. Anyway, and apparently I did not make them quiet, because I did the gritty. I did the $1 Million Baby Dance. I took some notes from Truman the Tiger at Mizzou and did some of his or her signature moves. Not sure which it is. Anyway, Benny the Bearcat on Friday. And I am telling you, Clinton, when I was doing the gritty, and then I got to the other side. This is me doing the gritty. Look at that form. Look at that form.
Solid. So solid.
You can kind of, if you can kind of see the cheerleaders in the background dying laughing. But I practiced seriously, Clinton. But look at that form. Anyway, so I get to the other edge of the gym after doing the gritty a couple times, and I can't breathe. I cannot breathe. And so I thought it was the fact there's no air movement in that costume, because there's not. I was sweating so bad it wasn't even funny. I could not have done that before being in the parade. Anyway, but then on the weekend, I was showing the girls because they were like, Mom, that gritty was so good. We didn't think it was you.
No, here we go.
Yeah,
and you're like, you girls, you have no idea how hard I hit the gritty.
So then I showed them by doing the gritty across the street after the volleyball game that no, it was me. I practiced. And Clint, I was so out of breath. I realized it was not the costume. It's me. I mean, but it was so hot. So I took that head off and and no one knew it was me until I walked out of the school and I'm drenched in sweat anyway, so I just want you to know that I love school spirit and I will do what it takes. And that includes being Benny the Bearcat. I'll try to find a video, but they put in a no phone policy at school and I like it. I love it because, phones are a distraction. So, but the teachers try to follow it as well. So no one got a video and no one knew it was me. So they just thought,
I bet there is a video somewhere.
I can't find one. I've asked.
And listen, it sounds to me like you may get to reprise that role here in the future. You did such a great job and made such
special occasions. But I do think I missed my calling. I should have been the mascot at Mizzou. I do think I missed my call.
That's awesome. Inside, it got kind of hot and steamy in there.
It was awful. It was awful. I had to put my hair up because otherwise you could see the hair in the back of the costume. So I had to put my hair up, and it was awful. One of the elementary classes was like, do the worm. Do the worm.
Oh, yeah, you should have.
No, my head would have fallen off. It's not like this costume is some $5,000.
You're going to be dunking at half court. You're going to be dunking from half court at the home basketball games in another week or two.
That's my head. We'll have to find a way to attach that. Anyway, I will for special occasions do this. But I think we all have made sacrifices for our little schools. And I love it. I love homecoming. I love tradition. I love fall. Farmers came in. We had a soup and chili lunch, and they came in over lunch to grab some before they went back out to the combine. Ken mentioned it. We haven't had a lot of breaks around it with one rain delay total. Every farmer that I talk to, it's burnout mode. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There's still a lot to go. There's some delays because of just some of these elevators being full. Missy warned us about that. Missy warned us. She said, if you have storage, you need to think about taking it to town first before you take it to, because they expect delays this year with this bigger crop and just selling old crop and things. But it is burnout right now for a lot of these farmers. So
I know. Well,
hang in there.
I know. And I like how Ken said to be safe, because I think that's really important. I know a couple of weeks ago or about a week ago, Ken was warning about fires and combine fires and field fires.
It's so dry. It is so dry around here. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier to Ken is somebody posted on social media around here that their lilacs, she goes, what a pleasant surprise. My lilacs are in bloom. I've never had my lilacs bloom in the fall. Like, this is not a pleasant surprise. This is not a good sign. We didn't have a peach crop last year because of that mild fall, and things had started to bloom, and then we had the freeze. You know what I mean? So it is not a pleasant surprise that lilacs are in bloom. This is something is going on. It has been a very, very mild fall, and we've seen accidents, we've seen combine fires, we've seen it all. It is dry, it is hot, and Ken mentioned that we had the first freeze. We had that the same. We had a frost here as well.
Yeah, well, leaves are changing here. Speaking of, so you and I are going to start talking about our Harvest of Thanks show that comes up around Thanksgiving, and getting out and getting some of those intros shot, because it's just that time of year. And
not ready for winter.
Ready for winter. Last year, the end of September, the leaves were changing and were nearly peak. this year, we probably have another week till we probably hit the very peak of leaf season here in northern Indiana. So I mean, it's a completely different fall. It's a lot different. So
yeah.
Well,
all right. Well,
you didn't gritty last year, but you did this year. All right. Hey, this has been fun. I always enjoy it. Thank you for being with me here.
Thank
on
you.
Unscripted.
Yep. Appreciate it. Talk to you next time.
All right. See everybody later.
Thanks for joining us. You can dive into more of Unscripted on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and listen to it anywhere podcasts are found. I'm Clinton Griffiths.
And I'm Tyne Morgan. From all of us here at Farm Journal, keep it real as you live your life unscripted.
Unscripted is a production of Farm Journal Studios, where no one grows alone.
Thanks for